Hello everybody and welcome back to A Court of Words and Pages. My name is Natalie. So today's video is one I feel needs no introduction. It is a booktube staple around this time of month, and that is my April TBR. So in February, for the first time ever, I filmed a TBR video and it went really great. My TBR really helped me throughout the month. While I didn't exclusively read books on my TBR, it really provided me that structure of if I finished a book and I didn't know what I wanted to read next, I could look at the books that were on that list and think, well, these are all options, and then I would pick one up from that. So I didn't do one in March just because life was not great at the beginning of March, but I want to do one in April. I have many books. It's a very tall stack. I think you can just see it. And, let's get started so I can talk about books I want to read. I did just want to add that these are not the only books I want to read in March. These are just books I physically have copies of. I have ebooks that I want to read, and I have books I'm going to get out of the library soon that I want to read. But I just don't have them yet, so I won't talk about them. So the first three I'm kind of grouping together because they're all kind of in the same vein of book, I guess. Well, not really, but they're all classics. And one of my goals for 2021 is to read a classic each month. So I'm filming this April TBR with many days left in the month. I have to pre-film it a bit before you guys are seeing it. So I haven't finished my classic for March. And the classic I'm reading for March was supposed to be Anne of Green Gables. Now I'm a grand total of 19 pages into this, and I'm not hating it, but I'm not hooked. And I know that's just because I'm so close to the start. So obviously I don't necessarily want to write this book off as a bad book, because I'm sure it's great. I'm just not extremely hooked right now. And so I was up in my sister's room a bit ago, kind of reading some of the books she has. She has a few classics that they're trying to pick which I was going to talk about for March. And I came down to I wanted to read either 1984 or Animal Farm, both by George Orwell, because I feel like he's a classical author that people read, so ooh, yeah, classics. So I read a few pages of both. Animal Farm seemed really interesting, especially it's short. We love shorts books, and the text is quite big. Animal Farm, from what I can gather from the back of this book, is about a farm that is taken over by the animals because they believe they are being mistreated, and they basically kind of set up a communist society, but it goes really wrong. I think George Orwell wrote this kind of targeted at Stalin in communist Russia, so that'll be interesting to see. I think it's supposed to be satire. Obviously, from the first few pages I read, talking pigs. I remember that from in 7th grade. I think I had a friend who read this, and we were all just very confused because we didn't understand literary themes, and we didn't really understand communism and the big deal with it. Obviously now, having learned about it, I do get it. And this seemed really interesting. It seemed like it'd be a good choice. But then I read the first grand total of 3 pages of 1984 by George Orwell, and it's all I want to read at the moment, so maybe this turns into my March classic. I don't know, but I'm putting this on my April TBR because I don't know if I can finish this. It's big and small font, so. But 1984, which George Orwell actually wrote in 1949, lots of numbers there, is basically in this time where society has kind of progressed to this utopia, but it's really bad, and you're just watched by the government. And we're following someone who is going to rebel against the government. Sounds very much like a lot of YA dystopian, so was this the original YA dystopian? I guess I'll probably find out soon. But so, it sounds interesting. I think I'll probably pick this up right now and maybe relegate Anne of Green Gables to next month. I feel so bad. I've been saying I'm going to read that book for years and I'm just not. But this actually sounds good, so maybe. I think it's also supposed to be good. I don't know. So the next book is one that I literally don't know anything about. I saw it on my English teacher's shelf. Thought that sounded good, and now here we are with it. And that is The Power, which is written by Noemi Alderman, I think. Hopefully. I'm just going to read you the back of this one because it has a really brief synopsis, and it doesn't tell you a lot about the actual content of the book. Well, it kind of just sets the premise, and it's really good. All around the world, women and girls are discovering they have the power. With a flick of the fingers, they can inflict terrible pain and even death. And with this small twist of nature, everything changes drastically. So, alternate history, don't know a lot, it's not too long. Sounds interesting. I think I've heard some good things, but I'm not quite sure. Let's give it a go. Let's see if I like it. It's not YA, so it's out of my comfort zone. Always good to read some books that are there. So the next 2 books are very much YA. They're both fairy loot books that have come out recently and I just haven't read them, so we're putting them on a TBR, so hopefully I'll read them. First one I'm talking about was This Golden Flame, which was the fairy loot book for February, and my goal is to read this when the read-along is taking place, because every month Fairy Loot hosts a read-along for their last month's box. well, the book that was in their last month's box. I can English great. So I'll read you the synopsis of this. I think it's like a sci-fi. Orphaned and forced to serve her country's ruling group of scribes, Karis wants nothing more than to find her brother, long ago shipped away. But family bonds don't matter to the scriptorium, whose sole focus is unlocking the magic of an ancient automated army. In search of her brother, Karis does the seemingly impossible. She awakens an hidden automaton. Intelligent, with a conscience of his own, Alex has no idea why he was made, or why his father, their nation's greatest traitor, once tried to destroy the automatons. Suddenly, the scriptorium isn't trying to control Karis, it's hunting her. Together with Alex, Karis must find her brother and the secret that's held our country in its power for centuries. So, it just sounds like it'd be a good, fun, quick, wide kind of science fiction read. Hopefully I'll actually read it when the read-along is happening, and maybe that'll motivate me to read. The next book from Fairy Lead I just put in my TBR because it sounded interesting, and that was Master of One by Jada Jones and Danny Bennett. Names. So I think this book is basically a hunt for Fey relics. I don't know. It sounded interesting. It's a chunker. I want to say it's 600. It's 500 pages long. It's a big book. I like big books. And I will now read you the synopsis. Life in the Queen City isn't easy, especially for a 2-bit thief like Rags. When his latest score goes sideways, he's nabbed by royal sorcerer Morian the Last, who forces him to steal the 6 pieces of an immeasurably powerful ancient Fey relic. Rags is still determined to somehow get away unscathed until he discovers that the relics Morian is after are actually people. A distractingly handsome Fey prince who has been asleep for centuries, a Queen's Guard deserter with more honor than common sense, a daughter of a disgraced noble family who hits first and asks questions later, a deceptively sweet-natured prince, a member of the underground resistance neither trusting nor trustworthy, and him, Rags. There's no way they can let Morian enact his dark plans, but 6 misfits against an especially wicked evil doesn't make for generous odds. Luckily, Rags is not generous, he's smart, and he has a plan that just might work. So, it sounds interesting. I think there's romance in this, or supposedly. The only thing is, I've heard some bad things about this, some negative reviews, but let's give a book a chance. Come on, guys. So the next one is a book I'm skeptical to say. I'm excited because I've heard it's really dark and depressing and not great topics are covered in, but it's important, and it talks about the music industry and kind of the darker side of the music industry and how people can be manipulated, and that is Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. So I believe in this book we are following, oh wow, hi ring light. I believe in this book we are following Enchanted, who was an up-and-coming music person, and she is signed on by Corey Fields, who is this really great music producer, and basically I think this book follows how he manipulates her to get what he wants, and then he is found dead, and Enchanted can't remember the night before, and she's a suspect, and they're trying to figure out if she did it. I think it sounds really interesting, and I think it's going to be an important read that really does shine a light on the harmfulness of the music industry and how manipulative some people can be. So, very excited to read this one. I've heard amazing things about it. Moving on to a lighter tone, this next book is the final book in a reread of my favorite series I've been doing for the last few months. I took March off for this reread, and we're going to finish it up in April, and that is The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater, which is the 4th book in the Raven cycle. So, this book, I think, was definitely my least favorite. It doesn't have a great ending, but it's still, good, and, the whimsy and the vibes are still all in this one, but I think the ending is, kind of inconvenient, especially one particular thing, but, I'm excited. I love the series. It just brings me so much joy in the characters. I love the characters so much. So, in this book, we follow Blue Sargent, who is the only person in her family of clairvoyants that doesn't have any magical powers. And Blue is also special. She's been told by everyone she ever meets that if she kisses her true love, he will die. Then Blue meets 4 boys called the Raven Boys. They go to the local academy, and she knows to stay away from them. And she gets roped into their quest to find a dead Welsh king. And thus ensues a mystery and an adventure full of magic, full of whimsy. I love this world so much! I love the characters in this. That is really the strong point of this series. The characters are just so amazing. From Blue to the 4 Raven Boys, I love them all. And the romance in the series, I absolutely love it. And I'm just so excited to read this conclusion again. I think I've only actually read this one once. I'm pretty sure I've read all the other one before this reread. I'm sure I've read them more than once. And so I'm very excited to be finishing up this series. for the second time. Next one is another sequel and another finale to a series, but of course it wasn't on my series I need to finish list, but this is the finale to a duology, and that is Wildcard by Mary Lou, which is the sequel to Warcross. I'm sorry if you can see the ring light in the desk jacket. I'm trying to avoid it, but it's just not having it. So Warcross is a science fiction duology that is set kind of in the future, in this basics our society, but everyone is addicted to this virtual reality game called Warcross, which is basically capture the flag. We follow Amika, who is a bounty hunter, and one day she accidentally glitches herself into like the biggest Warcross games, and she is asked by the founder of Warcross to come and basically go undercover and try to find someone who's trying to destroy Warcross. I really enjoyed Warcross. It was a really quick, fun, fast-paced read. It helped me read when I was in a bit of a reading slump, so I'm really excited to continue this one, except for I definitely have heard negative things about it, so that's kind of disappointing, especially because Warcross ended on a huge cliffhanger. I feel like this book could have had great potential, but I don't want to write it off yet. I want to give it a fair shot, so I'm very excited to finish this. The next one is actually another sequel to a book I read in February. I guess I just took March off from reading sequels, guys. But that is Angels and Demons by Dan Brown, which is actually the first book in like the Robert Langdon series. I read what is technically the second book in the series, The Da Vinci Code, in February, but I think really the first two books, it doesn't matter what order you read them in, and I absolutely love The Da Vinci Code. It was one of my favorite books I read that month. It's one of my favorite reads of the year so far, and so I've just been waiting before I could get my hands on a copy of this. I'm so excited to read this, and then I also have a copy of the third book, The Lost Symbol, waiting for me when I ever finish this one. So I don't exactly know what this one is about. I think it has to do something with the Vatican, so shall we find out? I think we shall. An ancient secret brotherhood, a devastating weapon of destruction, an unthinkable target. When world-renowned Harvard symbologist Robert Langdon is summoned to his first assignment to a Swiss research facility to analyze a mysterious symbol seared to the chest of a murdered physicist, he discovers evidence of the unimaginable, the resurgence of an ancient secret brotherhood known as the Illuminati. I didn't know that was in here. The most powerful underground organization ever to walk the earth. The Illuminati has now surfaced to carry out the final phase of its legendary vendetta against its most hated enemy, the Catholic Church. Langdon's worst fears are confirmed on the eve of the Vatican's Holy Conclave, when a messenger of the Illuminati announces they have hidden an unstoppable time bomb at the very heart of the Vatican. With the countdown underway, Langdon jets to Rome to join forces with Vittorio Vetra, a beautiful and mysterious Italian scientist, to assist the Vatican in a desperate bid for survival. Embarking on a frantic hunt through sealed crypts, dangerous catacombs, deserted cathedrals, and the most secretive vault on Earth, Langdon and Vetra follow a 400-year-old trail of ancient symbols that snakes across Rome toward the long-forgotten Illuminati lair, a clandestine location that contains the only hope for the Vatican's salvation. So, it sounds really interesting. My favorite thing about the Da Vinci Code had to be the use of symbols as clues, which I'm sure will be the same in Angels and Demons, and I'm so excited to continue on with this series because I know I'm gonna love it. So, remember earlier in this video when I mentioned that the power was gonna be a bit out of my comfort zone? I think I have books that are even more out of my comfort zone, and that's because they're non-fiction? Yeah, I don't read non-fiction. No. I don't have anything against it, I just have a hard time finding a non-fiction book that actually keeps me engaged. But we're trying this month. I have two books here, both by the same author, both kind of about the same thing, but not really. You'll see what I mean in a minute. And I'm definitely planning on starting one of these soon. I have the audiobook of it. It's like a 20-hour audiobook, but we're going on a long car ride in these next few days, so I should be able to start it, at least. I don't know. And the books I have are The Wars of the Roses and The Plantagenets, both by Dan Brown. So, both these books were spurred on by my love of the White Queen TV show, and I figured, I should probably learn a bit about the actual time period, like the actual historical events, rather than fictionalized. As I'm watching the TV show and starting to read the book series it was adapted from, I should probably have a bit of basis. So, I think I'll probably start by picking up The Wars of the Roses, which is kind of weird because, in historical, event timelines, the stuff that's talked about in this book are technically after the Plantagenets, but this just sounds more interesting to me at the moment. This is following a war, and I think this is just following a bunch of different people, so, but this could be context for this. I don't know. You see my dilemma? So my plan is to start The Wars of the Roses. And unless that goes terribly wrong, read that and then maybe read this one. But if I start The Wars of the Roses, but if it's just like confusing and I don't know what the author is talking about, then I'll go back to the Plantagenets and then read that and then go back to The Wars of the Roses. Also, this is like just over 300 pages. And this is, I don't even know how long. 500 plus. I feel like 300 is much more manageable than 500, especially when it comes to the first nonfiction I've read in a long time. That is my April TBR. It's quite ambitious. It's a large stack. I don't even want to know how many pages I'm attempting to read this month, but it's going to be a good time, fun, all the reading. Hopefully I will do all the reading this month. Thank you guys so much for watching. Down below in the description box, you'll find links to all the books I mentioned in this video, as well as links to my Goodreads and Bookstagram if you want to follow me there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!